So I'm quite behind on my TBR, even though I am ahead of schedule by 2 or 3 books on Goodreads, because I've not actually been reading the books that are on my TBR. I've just been reading graphic novels.
I've been at Ellis Station Academy for exactly 24 hours. 24 hours? And I've already washed out. Honestly, I'm not even surprised. There's no one, and I'm still reading your boxers and travel bag. Right next to brand new Academy t-shirt I just bought yesterday. He is well burned now. Maybe I'll light it on fire and hoist it up the flagpole of command once I'm back on Earth soil. The cluster of guys crawls across the back wall of the barracks, laughing as they pass their exam scores around. They're either too oblivious to know how loud they are, or they just don't care. And I hear every word of the conversation.
One of the books that I did read that is on my TBR, and is also a graphic novel, was Witchy. I think I gave it 3 stars. It has a lot of potential for the storyline, but there were things that just didn't make sense. Like, the whole thing is that people's magic is determined by the length of their hair. And if your hair's too long, you consider it too dangerous, and so you're killed. It starts off with the protagonist's father being killed for this reason. But then later in the book, we meet people who have hair that's just as long or even longer than his. They're not killed, they're not hunted, they're not persecuted in any way. And some of them actually are in positions of power, or like, they're just peacefully living a life in no danger at all. So it's like, why are they fine but he wasn't fine? Like, there's no explanation as to why some people got away with it, some people didn't. And it's clearly not, some people just weren't cool, because like, people weren't like underground or anything, because people were in positions of government, which her father was as well. So it's not like people in those positions were immune to this. It just doesn't make sense. It's also like, there's a scene where she cuts her hair, and doing that immediately notifies the authorities and brands her as a traitor. But we see a lot of characters who have fringes, and their fringes which are clearly have been cut, and they've been cut straight. So it's like, people have been killed at cutting their hair. So why haven't they notified the authorities? And also, if your hair's too long that you're deemed a threat, why don't you just cut your hair? It also pissed me off because, like, the synopsis says it's about her going through these trials to see if she can join this, like, military kind of operation for her country. But then when we actually get to that part, it just skips over the entire thing. It's like, here you go, we're like doing the introduction speech, and then the next page is, it's finished. Like, you don't see any of it. It's like, why market the book as that, but then actually not include any of that in the actual story? I would read another book in this series, because it sounds like it's going to be a series. It ends off with no conclusion to anything, but at the same time, I've not heard anything about a sequel. I can't find any information that there is a sequel. It looks like it's just a standalone, in which case the story's shit, because it's completely unresolved. Like, nothing's resolved at all. Another book series I read was Something Scaring the Children by James Tynion. And when I was first reading the first one, I was like, this seems really similar to Stranger Things. So I looked up to see if it was made before Stranger Things and maybe Stranger Things used it as like inspiration. But no, it was made quite a few years after Stranger Things came out. And I'm like, it's so similar that I'm like, this story's kind of pointless because it's already been told. Like, retellings are one thing, and like, originality doesn't really exist, but to this point, especially seeing a Stranger Thing is still ongoing and is recent, to tell a story that's pretty much the exact same, it's like, why was it needed? It wasn't. So, you got the group of friends, and there's a monster that like seems to be attacking the children. It's revolving around the children, and it focuses on one child in particular who's a victim of this monster. But instead of Stranger Things, whereas one kid gets abducted and the other kids try to find him, it's the other way around. The other kids all die, and the one kid's a survivor and is trying to figure out the truth of what this monster is and whatnot. There's even the creepy girl who no one knows, who turns up out of nowhere, who's somehow connected to the monsters and the only one who knows how to destroy it and whatnot. There's a shady organization that's also linked to the monsters and is willing to do anything to cover up the fact that they exist and is willing to kill innocent people. There's a sheriff who knows his way out of his debt, but also knows that it's kind of supernatural element where everyone else in the police force is completely clueless. There's even like the Briars family, pretty much an exact duplicate. But instead of it being, well, it's a little girl. Like, Jonathan's character is pretty much copied and pasted into this. Even Winona Ryder's character, it looks the same. She looks the same. Like an alcoholic, chain-smoking mother who's become very desperate and a little unhinged because of her kid going missing. Then there's the older brother who's trying to keep it all together and is like trying to solve it and is keeping the family together and like the sole provider of the family while this is all happening. Like, even the pictures of their house looks the same. You're pretty much going to get nothing out of this comic series if you've already watched Stranger Things. The only thing I will say is if he does continue the series, that could be better because the way it ends gives off the potential for a much more interesting and much a story that would be more original and be its own instead of just copying and pasting Stranger Things. Another book that I was supposed to read from was The Disasters by N.K. Jemisin. Originally when this came out, I was really excited for it. But since then, it's been getting a lot of very bad reviews. So I'm listening to the audiobook, and frankly, I feel like if I was reading it, a physical copy, I probably would have given up. I see why people don't like it. Because the writing style is very bland and boring. It's so basic, really, that it's like, it doesn't feel like you're reading a story. The only good thing I can really say is that the characters, straight from the beginning when they're introduced, are very well defined and have their own distinct personalities and characters. It's also like, it's said to be a space opera. Like the tagline of the book is "Space is hard, grab a helmet," but only the first chapter of the book is set in space. The rest of it is set in an urban environment. Like, there's literally no need for it to be set in space at all. You could set the story on Earth and you wouldn't have to change a single thing. It kind of feels like the author decided to just change a few words around to say it was on the moon instead and whatnot, so they could label it as sci-fi to make it seem more interesting and more appealing. I'm only 36% of the way through with that, so maybe, hopefully, it will get better, but I don't have high expectations. I think at the very most this is going to be a 3-star.